Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee Chat with David and Kylie Knight.
Hey, good morning. So glad you are here. Yesterday is Friday, January 22nd, 2020.
It is. It's a palindrome week. 2021. Not 2020.
2021.
We're done with 2020.
We don't want to repeat
So
that.
done with 2020.
My apologies. I don't want to scare you. We didn't go back in time.
No, not
Good
at all.
old 1955. Wait, what?
Josh Kohler, good to see you, my friend. And of course, he is using the hashtag Hello Nights and hashtag Cup of Awesome.
That's right.
And it is a Cup of Awesome this morning, isn't it?
It is a good cup of
You
coffee.
did a fine job with that,
well,
my dear.
it starts with really good beans.
It does.
From our good friend.
Jared Coe.
That's right.
And Kofi.
This is Kofi.
Exactly.
Coffee.
Be sure to like and share because otherwise it's just us sitting here and people need to know about this, right?
Yeah, we've got amazing guests every single week.
Oh my
who
goodness.
bring
Our guests,
so much.
they just seem to get better and better.
Yeah.
And today's going to be phenomenal. I can't even
is.
wait to get to it. But we're going to have to.
Yeah, so bring people along. You can want to join this party.
The party, I like that.
Yeah.
I should get the lights back here to like do some flashy stuff like
Maybe.
party. I could probably set that up. Ooh.
Maybe.
Now I'm thinking about it.
Although I might need to have a second coffee before all that
Before the party begins.
I'm still in this.
Joshua St. John says, I wouldn't be disappointed if you did go back in time.
Yeah.
But not to 2020, right? You don't want to go
No.
back to 2020, do you,
No.
Josh? Come on. Let's be honest.
I think I do.
It's the Joshua Show, apparently.
I like that.
We got Joshua Kohler and Joshua St. John
Yes.
watching with us.
Woohoo.
So, yeah, so anyways, it's been about a week.
It's been
since
a
we hung
week.
out. It's been a week.
Yes.
You know, I like to say that. Oh, and if you're watching on replay,
Hashtag replay.
or hashtag hash browns.
Oh, and for all our
Ooh.
YouTube friends, be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button so that way every time a new one goes live or gets fed in there, you get notified of that. And if you want to watch us live,
Yeah.
we are
Come.
live on Facebook at 10 a.m. Central every single week. So
Come
feel
join
free
the
to
fun.
jump over there and watch the fun live with
That's
us.
right.
And then you
At
can
Night
comment.
Illusions.
Yes. No,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well,
Yeah.
it helps.
Okay.
So Joshua St. John wants to go back to 1955.
Okay.
Which, you know, it's not bad. Especially if I can get that DeLorean.
Exactly. Yeah. Then it makes sense.
I just don't want to kiss my mother.
Hopefully people know what you're talking
Gosh,
about.
I
right
really
there.
hope so. If they haven't, spoiler alert. Well, so yeah, it's been a week, and we've been kind of busy around here. We had a big meeting on Sunday, which
Right. All that happened this week.
It all happened this week. Which you'll be hearing more about what that meeting was about coming up
Yes.
soon. We will be moving soon.
Yes.
So we found a new place to live,
Yes.
which is exciting. And then something kind of sad happened. It's been a really rough couple of months in the world of magic. We've lost some very big names. Last week, actually, before the show, we lost Siegfried from Siegfried and Roy.
Yes.
Passed away from
Famous duo that were in Vegas for how many years?
so many years.
So many
Yeah,
years.
yeah. They literally changed the landscape of Las
Right.
Vegas
Roy passed away
last year. Yeah.
And then Siegfried passed away last weekend.
Yeah, Roy passed away from complications with COVID.
Yeah.
He survived being mauled by a tiger, but COVID got him.
That's so sad.
It is sad. And then Siegfried passed away last week from pancreatic cancer,
Oh,
which again is also sad.
yeah.
This is such a fun topic to start with.
Right? I don't know if I like that.
But then last night, right before heading off to bed, we found out that another giant in the world of magic actually started off in the Dallas area.
Okay.
Named
Yeah.
Mark Wilson passed away. Many people may know this book. This is the Mark Wilson Course of Magic. Actually, this was sold in not libraries, bookstores. You remember
Okay.
bookstores? You'd go to the
Vaguely.
place and there was
Bookstore.
yeah,
What's a
you could
bookstore?
pick up.
Fascinating. Tell me more
I
about
know
this.
it's fascinating stuff. But Mark and his
And these are paper.
paper, yeah, real paper. Mark and his wife Nani were magicians, and they had like the first TV magic show. And so weekly they would do all new magic
Amazing.
for the crowd. And they're the ones who really kind of started the whole concept of, making sure you understood that there was no camera tricks involved, that it was all happening live. But so he passed away last night. Big loss. He was 91 years old, and
91.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Joshua St. John, I've already seen enough death in January. Time to change
I agree.
the subject.
I suggest coffee.
Coffee. Let's talk about coffee. I like that.
This cup of coffee is amazing.
This is the Rwandan from Kofi.
Yes.
And it's so good. And in fact,
it's our favorite.
Ordered some more today.
Yes, we did. We need to pick it up.
And
It just got getting roasted
it's roasted
today.
right. Yeah, getting roasted right now as we speak. Yeah.
I know.
So
it just
good.
makes you smile knowing that, doesn't it?
And soon you too may get a cup of coffee of Kofi, but we'll talk about that as
Pack of
things
beans.
go. Pack of beans. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shall we get to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's not talk about any of this anymore. Let's
Nope.
bring on our incredible guest today.
I love it. Well, we have a phenomenal guest. Had the chance to meet this guy. Well, I guess last year, maybe a year before. I don't know. I
He
feel like
can
I've known him
correct us.
forever. But
I know.
he's a super awesome dude.
Yeah.
And he has an incredible story, and he's done some amazing things, particularly in 2020, which he's going to
Right.
talk about. So without any
Sit back
further
for story time.
That's right. Without any further ado, please welcome our friend and now yours, Mr. Brian Wood. Hello, sir. How are you?
What is up, everybody? Hope you're doing
Hi.
well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you
so good
for
to
coming
see
on.
you.
Now, where are you calling in from?
Yeah. I am in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Love it. Love it.
Oh.
Beautiful area.
Yeah.
Beautiful area.
How is it out
Yes,
there
it
today?
is. Yes, it is. It's beautiful today. Blue skies, sunny, low 50s.
Ooh.
Ooh.
So we either need a little bit of snow or bring on the spring.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. I agree.
My
Now,
vote's for the spring.
did we see you
Yeah.
enjoying a cup of coffee over there?
We did. Yes, we did.
There-
Number
oh.
4 probably for today.
Number
Oh,
4.
I like your
Wow.
style. I like your style.
The wife is off today. I have a long list of honeydews to get done.
Oh.
Better juice up.
Gotcha.
Get caffeinated.
Sounds good. Well, then
Nice.
we'll get to it. So you
Yes.
can get onto that honeydew list. You're
Unless you
welcome.
want
Yes.
us to extend this
Right.
conversation longer, and then it could excuse.
That works.
You can blame
That
us.
works.
Suddenly the interview got really long.
Oh.
All right. Well, let's start off. Our favorite question to ask our guests is, what is your faith story? How did you come to know Jesus?
Well, I grew up in North Carolina. If you can't tell by the way that I talk, that I grew up in the South, but
Yes.
grew up in a small town in obviously the Bible Belt, and church was a way of life. It was something that you did, and wasn't really left up for debate, especially in my house. And so I grew up in a very Southern Baptist conservative church to where I don't want to talk bad about my home church because it was incredible, but there was a little bit of, I guess, legalism is what I would call it. It was more, again, very, 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 very conservative. And I wasn't really convinced that I needed to go to church, especially as a teenager. I went because my mom told me to. But through as I think about the parable of the sower, those seeds just being thrown out and casted week in and week out. I did come to know Christ at the age of 12 years old, and I like to say that I began a relationship with him when I was 12, and I started following him when I was 22. And I know some people are like, that doesn't even make sense, but it really does, and I can kind of fill you in a little bit on my story. But I got saved then, and was actually a really good kid. Had a great head on my shoulders until I entered into high school, and high school was high school.
Yeah.
And so one party and one drink turned into ultimately a lifestyle into college. And that lifestyle then turned into an addiction, and was a drug addict for several years, and just lost and hopeless. But at the same time, and this is how I actually have asked myself several times, especially when I say I got saved at 12, started following Jesus in my 20s. I say, did I truly get saved at 12 years old? Because I see and saw and have lived such a drastic difference between what happened at the age of 12 and then what happened when I turned 20. But I say yes, because through my rebellious lifestyle in my late teens and through college. I always had conviction in my heart. I always
Mm.
knew what I was doing was wrong. I just couldn't get away from it, or at least didn't want to get away from it. And so, long story short, years of partying and drug addiction and just the prodigal son story, and met a beautiful young lady in college. Actually, went to college to become a nurse. Was kicked out of college after my first year because of my lifestyle, and
Whoa.
but through that, I met a young lady, and we started dating. Not long after we started dating, she was became pregnant by me, and I got back into college, slowed down a little bit. We had a baby, then got married, and had another baby. And when my daughter was 10 years old, or excuse me, 10 days old, I had a grand idea to have a large party at my house,
Uh-oh.
and invited all my friends over. And that night, while doing drugs, while uh, drinking massive amounts of alcohol, the Holy Spirit spoke to me in a way that I had never felt before. And again, it wasn't, it wasn't this audible voice, but it was very clear in my heart that God was asking me, "What are you doing with your life? Is
Wow.
this the man you want to be? Is this the father you want to be? Is this the husband you want to be? I've given you, I've blessed you and entrusted you with my children first, and
Mhm.
here you are living the way that you are." And in that moment, it was the most powerful moment I've ever had in my life. I essentially just said, "All right, here it is. Like, I give everything over to you." And I told everybody they had to go home. I put
Whoa.
my beer in the trash can, went upstairs. My wife was obviously furious with me that, we have a 2-year old and a 10-day old, and she had a C-section and I have a party.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I told her that night, I said, "You'll never have to worry about that again." And she said, for lack of better words, "Shut up and go to bed." and and I said what I meant. And from that day forward, April 10th, 2010, my life has been just a consistent. Not that I've not made mistakes, but I've been on a mission to live out a life that's following Christ with everything that I have, and to become more and more like Him every day. It's been an incredible journey.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
So,
that is see that's a powerful story.
It is.
You
yeah.
know.
When God gets a hold of your heart and,
Mm.
oh, that transition, that change.
Yeah, thank God for grace. Amen.
Amen to
Amen
that.
to that.
And
Absolutely.
that had to be like really surprising for I mean obviously your wife but your friends as well. Like
Yes.
what was the aftermath on that?
Yeah, it was well, it was denial at first, everybody like, "All right, here he goes, trying to be all super spiritual, and we know we're going to see him at the bar next week."
Mm,
Um and honestly, it was a struggle because I'm an extrovert. Like, I love people. Obviously, I'm in ministry. Like, I thrive off of people. I get energy off of people. I love to talk. If you haven't figured that out yet, you will in the next 20 minutes. But here we were, my wife and I. I was 22 years old, married with 2 kids and a house. And somehow, by the grace of God, I made it through nursing school, and I was a nurse. And it's like all of my friends who were 22 were not married with 2 kids, with a
Yeah.
house, and working as in
right.
a profession. And so we had to go several years with like no friends.
Mm,
Because I knew that, the friends that I had were not going to help me. I wasn't strong enough in my faith. I wasn't strong enough in my, I wasn't mature enough to be able to hang out with those friends and not give in to temptation. And so
wow.
I had to, it was me, my wife, and my kids.
Yeah.
And we luckily, I say luckily, we were blessed to get, connected to a church. And our friends were in their 30s. They were 10 years older than us. And it was incredible. Obviously, they're looking at me like their little brother. And it
Oh,
was a year of
yes.
just mentorship and being able to see what godly marriages look like, being able to see
Mm,
what godly
Yeah.
parents look like. But it was challenging, and there were a lot of people who kind of, I don't want anything to do with something, or I want to be 150%, and
Sounds
so,
familiar.
I went from, doing drugs one night to like ready to go preach in the street the next day, and everybody's like, "What's going on with this guy?" And so it was man, it was such an incredible journey, and
Wow.
I wouldn't change anything, honestly.
Yeah.
I wish I would have, done some things better, but
Sure.
I wouldn't change anything because it really has made me appreciate ultimately who God is
Hmm.
and how much He cares for us, how much He loves us. But it's just an incredible opportunity to, Paul talks about pressing forward and looking ahead, but to be able to look back occasionally, not to dwell in that, not to brag about that, but to say, man, look at what God has done in my own life. I know He can work in your life too. And so it's uh it's a cool part of my story.
That's so good.
It
Well, we
is.
appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah,
Grace.
absolutely.
Our grace. Like we do
Absolutely.
not
Mm.
deserve
No.
His love at all. And so good. Thank you for sharing. So
Yes.
you mentioned that you have a degree in nursing and you've also got a degree in biblical studies. So I'm kind of curious, what, if any, crossover or parallels do you see between those two fields of study?
Well, I've joked about writing a book
Oh,
about nursing and
cool.
ministry, but I'm not a writer. I write like I talk, so people probably wouldn't. Probably, I don't know.
That's what
I'm
editor's
not
for.
exactly, exactly. But then it wouldn't be authentic to me because it's like I didn't say that. There's a lot of comparisons. There's always been a desire in my heart, and obviously, hindsight 2020. I hate using that phrase after leaving last year,
Right.
but it's I look at how God had designed and created me from birth, and I've always had a desire um, and a part in me to help people,
Mm.
to care for people, and to help people in a time of need. And so I was an adrenaline junkie, still kind of am. I'm getting a little bit wiser in my older years, but I was a trauma nurse, and so
Wow.
I did pediatric trauma for the first 3 years, and then
Oh my goodness.
both adult and pediatrics for 5 years after that. And so ministry and loving on people and ministering to people is oftentimes very unpredictable. You have no idea what phone call you're going to get. You have no idea what conversation you're going to get or what email you're going to get. And in the trauma room, you have no idea what's walking through the door. So you just show up, you quote unquote put your armor on, and you get ready for battle, and you just get ready for whatever's coming. And wow, I mean, what a comparison to our walks with Christ. Like,
Mm.
when things are great and we're on that mountaintop, all of a sudden, something happens and everything changes in a
Right.
moment. And working in the ER, it's the same thing. Like the day could be incredible and everything could be going well, and then all of a sudden, you know, everything turns upside down.
Mm.
And so there's that aspect. There is the aspect of and this is really kind of a weird comparison, but as I think about individuals in sin, I like to say often that there's no sin that doesn't affect someone else. And so
Mm.
every action that we have, whether it's, private in our own home, it still affects someone else. It's going to come out
Mhm.
eventually. And as I think about pediatric nursing, obviously my primary focus was to take care of the child who was the patient, but right beside that was a mom or a dad who you had to take care of as well. And so that in a nutshell, to kind of sum that up, it's like, as we're in ministry, yes, I may be talking to a husband who's having problems, but what I'm saying and ministering and trying to help him through is going to affect his wife,
Mm.
or a teenager to a parent, or I mean, the list goes on. It's like, this big circle to where everything is connected. And so there's that aspect. And then my favorite, as being a trauma nurse, nobody goes to the emergency department because they don't have a need. Like
Mm.
nobody shows up for fun, right?
Yeah.
And many times they show up in some of their absolute most desperate moments.
Mm.
Like, I better go here, or I could lose my life. And as I think about, what Jesus said about the church, and it's not for the healthy, it's for the sick. And so we have an opportunity to really minister and meet people in some of their most desperate times of life. I've seen people who run away from the church, but in a moment something tragic happens in their life, and all of a sudden, where do they turn? Many people turn right there to the church, and so we have an opportunity to have an open door, like the emergency department, to say, "Come on in, and let's get you treated." And the great thing about ministry is the prescription is always the same. it's Jesus, right? And so.
Give this man some applause,
So, yeah,
right.
everybody. Give him applause.
Uh,
Woo! There you go.
But yeah, so those would be a few of my top ones.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Kirk Quinlivan says amen to that. And then Josh Kohler says, nurses rule the world. My daughter's heading off to college for a nursing degree. So
Fantastic. So she'll
Awesome.
get
That's
to experience
awesome.
all that too.
Well, I actually, I guess right now I'll add one more thing is, and we're probably about to get to that question, but where I am in life, I've been out of the hospital for over 5 years. I haven't been nursing, but have maintained my license. And I'm going back to the hospital for just like a shift every week, once a week, just to kind of supplement some income. But at this moment, this season of my life, there's never been an easier time to invite someone to church, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
turn on the channel and we're going to be on YouTube or Facebook. And so God has given me a brand new mission field, like in the hospital. And so I'm about to bust it wide open and invite everybody that I treat to church. And so I'm excited.
I love it. I love it. Well, and you're right. So you alluded to this. So in October of last year, you actually left a paid ministry position to launch a new church plant. And you did that in the middle of a pandemic, which is slightly crazy. So what was the crazy call that encouraged you to do that, and how have things been going? And of course, how can people find out more about what you're doing and or support your ministry?
Yeah, awesome question. Yeah, it is. I love it. I've been asked this question 962 times.
Sure.
Like, what are you doing?
Just by yourself, right?
So, yeah. So when in 2010, when I'm like, hey, I'm going to get my life together, and I fully surrendered, it didn't take long before God started kind of tugging in my heart. We got plugged into that church that I was telling you about. And immediately God put a burden in my heart to try to help teenagers not make some of the same dumb choices that I made. And so my wife and I were serving in the student ministry there, and I knew fairly quickly that God was going to transition me out of nursing into student ministry. And so I started taking some classes at Liberty University and working on just, a basic Bible degree, and then started praying. And we knew that where we were living, it was a pretty tough city to raise a family. And we were like, we're praying that God's going to take us out of here. And long story short, I ran across a guy. We went to this beach in North Carolina on vacation. And during that time, my wife and I had been just really seeking and praying, like, okay, God, like, we know that you're up to something. We really feel like you're going to move us from where we are. Will you make it clear to us where you want to move us? And we had spent the whole weekend there. We were eating lunch, getting ready to come back home. We had some friends with us, and my wife and I were sitting across from each other. I had the husband of our friends, and she was talking to the wife. And I made eye contact with her while we were eating lunch, and she looked at me, I looked at her, and we both knew without even having to skip a beat what each other was thinking. And so we got in the car and we were like, this is it. This is the city that God has called us to. And so we didn't know why, we didn't know when, we didn't know how, we didn't know where we were going. And so fast forward, we put our house on the market that same week. And that was in June. Fast forward to December, I finally ran across a guy who was planning a brand new church in this city. And I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, bro, like, I know you don't know me, and this is probably weird, but I want to be your youth pastor. And he was like, he took like 2 weeks to respond, and he was like, it's awesome. I would love to connect with you, but youth ministry is not at the top of the list right now. We're trying to get our church off the ground. And
Right.
long story short, again, I know I've said that twice. We connected, and I loved this vision. Felt like God was calling us there, and I said, "Look, man, this is what I want to do." And he said, "All right, I'm just going to warn you. I would love to have you on our launch team. I would love for you to be a part of this. I can't pay you."
Yep.
And my wife and I at the time were both working as government nurses for the Army.
Oh, wow.
And we said, this is it. And so I left my government nursing job to become a volunteer youth pastor. And so that's another chapter of the story. But all of that to say, through my 3 years there, and coming from this Southern Baptist background, I remember like the first couple of weeks of our church plant, he was like, "Hey, bro, go take the boom box out in the parking lot and turn on the YMCA and just go bonkers." And I'm like, "You want me to play the YMCA in the parking lot of our church?" And he's like, "Heck yeah, do it." And like my little Southern Baptist, legalistic mind's like,
Yeah.
we're all going to hell. Like, and it was just little things along the way that was nowhere near a sin. It was just having fun and creating an environment where unchurched people felt comfortable. Again, not that we watered down or backed away from the gospel, but like, who cares if you're doing a YMCA in the parking lot? And those little things along those 3 years, man, I was like, if I can plant a church one day, I'm going to do this. And so we left there, moved to Virginia. I was a youth pastor there for 4 years. And I told them when they interviewed me, I said, "I love you guys. I'm so thankful that you're taking the time to interview me. I just want you to know there's a seed in my heart to plant a church. It may be in 6 months. It may be in 6 years. So enter at your own risk." And they hired me anyway. And honestly, those 4 years there helped me mature and to become at a place to where I felt like the timing was now. And so September of 2019, a good friend of mine who was a discipleship pastor at that church, we went to a conference together, and we had joked ever since I got there about planning a church together. He's an African American, and we actually joked. We were like, we're going to start a church called Ebony and Ivory, and
Yeah.
so. But we went to a conference together, and during that week, we really kind of started getting serious about conversation, and God really started tugging. And the thing that kept hanging us up is like we were like, how do we plant a church together? Like I've heard of very few churches that are successful co-pastoring,
Right.
And so I couldn't get past that for the longest time, and finally about March of 2020, we really like, all right, this is going to happen. We need to really start seeking and praying. And through the summer, God kind of gave us our name and then the vision. The area that we live in is it used to be known as the 7 cities. There's 7 big cities. There's about 1.6 million people in about a 100-mile radius of where we are. And God really gave both of us a burden for these cities. And so that was what we named our church, 7 Cities Church, which is attached to our vision. And we would love to be able to impact, all 7 cities. We would love to, it's never been easier to impact cities the way that we can now,
True.
And so, but we want a physical presence in those cities as well. But we stepped out in October, and he had about 10 years of ministry experience. I had about 10 years of some volunteer and paid experience. And we were like, hey, we looked at organizations. I was a part of ARC back at my old church plant, and we looked at Acts 29 and all of these other organizations that are incredible. And we just really felt like, and we still have used a lot of different organizations' resources and their training, but we were like, hey, let's get the foundation laid quickly, and let's take advantage of this opportunity that we have in this season. And so January 3rd, we launched our online campus with very little financial needs. We didn't have to get a building. We just needed
Mhm.
some equipment to do our recordings and our sermons. And so, um, honestly, everybody says, "You're crazy. What are you doing?" And I say, it's never been easier to plant a church.
It's true.
Like,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
really, and we want a building. We want to be in a physical location, but
Right.
we already have, we have about 30 families that are just
Oh,
Wow.
completely committed and all in. And so when we get ready to look for a building, it's going to be a whole lot easier to try to purchase one of those or sign a lease on one of those, knowing that we already have a pretty strong foundation. And so it's been incredible. This is week 4 this weekend, and it's been an awesome journey so far.
I love that. I
that's
love
so
it. That's
good.
so exciting. And I love the fact that you guys were willing to kind of just jump out and do that thing that God's calling you to do.
Me
You know,
too.
sometimes it's scary, but when He's calling you,
Right.
it's the right thing to do. So
And
Yeah, and I
talk-
say, go ahead.
I was going to say,
Go
I
ahead,
was just
Con.
talking about your past, your upbringing. Our pastor often talks about being in religious recovery.
mm,
Like,
Mm,
there's so many of us that were brought up in that very strict
yes.
Christian background, and then to try and get over that, he calls it religious recovery. And yeah, understanding in it from a different point of view is just incredible.
Yeah.
It takes time.
It's so true. Yeah, no doubt. And I tell people all the time, I try not to like say this too much publicly, but people are like, what's going? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I'm just, I'm just following the Lord and doing what He tells me to do. And again, there's truth to that, but we're not just out here, being blown by the wind. I mean, we
Right.
have some systems in place, but in the same sense, like I've never been in this position before. Like I don't know.
yeah.
Like I got to help plant a church, being under the wing of someone else. So if I didn't want to take responsibility for it, I just pushed it off to him. But now it's like
It's
you're
on
it,
you.
buddy. You better
Yeah.
figure it out. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
That's a
but
big shift.
but that's the aspect that's really been incredible. Is just seeing God continue to protect and to provide and to lead, and to know that what He's called you to do, He's equipped you to do. And even though you may not see it or feel it, it's there. And so you keep pushing and keep pursuing and step into whatever He's called in faithful obedience, and you won't be disappointed.
I love that.
Well said.
So
Well, moving on, we know that you're a family man at heart after hearing your story. So,
Yeah.
in particular, you're passionate about adopting. So, how do you go about building a foundation and culture of raising families who embrace those kids that are overlooked?
Yeah, so obviously the first thing about adoption is, I guess, to share a little bit more of my
Yeah.
story. So we now have 3 biological children: a 12-year-old boy, a 10-year-old girl, and then a 4-year-old boy. And obviously there's a little gap between number 2 and number 3. And we part of our mentors, our older couples that we started hanging out with when we were in our early 20s, they adopted 2 children from China years ago, and we got to kind of go on that journey with them. And again, I love the illustration or I guess example of seeds. Um, During that season, God planted seeds in our heart to one day adopt, and so we kind of started the process a couple different times and would stop, and then we started again, and then Kristen got pregnant again, and so we waited, and then eventually 2019, January of 2019, we finally said, all right, let's do this. And one of our biggest, I guess, hiccups or thing that was keeping us from doing that was finances. I don't know if you know anything about adoption, but it is crazy expensive. And so, but I listened to Kristen and I were listening to a sermon by Francis Chan, and he said, so often we look at God's word and we see something, but then we'll ask God, tell me if you want me to do this. And when I look at God's word about adoption, God has already said yes. And so unless He tells you no, you move forward. And so God had not told us no. So we stepped out. And 2019 was filled with, the paperwork pregnancy is what they call it. So all of this paperwork, we found a little girl that they matched us with who has Down syndrome in China. She was 2 years old when we first connected with her and were matched with her. And so New Year's Eve of 2019, so the last day of the year, our agency called and said, hey, everything's a go. You are approved. Everything is locked in. You're going to get to hold your daughter for the first time on February 3rd of 2020. And so she said, go ahead and book your flights. January 28th of 2020, we were supposed to fly out and go get her. They called us on the 26th and said, hey, obviously you've probably been hearing about everything, and you're not going to be able to go to China. And so all adoption travel to China was shut down and other countries immediately. And China is still at this moment closed down. And so we've been waiting all year to get our daughter and be able to bring her home to her forever home. And so so that's kind of the story, I guess, the heartbeat of adoption. And so the latter question of building a culture of adoption. And so let me first preface this with I am not an expert in this. I'm obviously passionate about this. And then B, I am in the middle of trying to do this right now. We set out from day one with our new church to say, hey, listen, we want to be a church that focuses on children, not just not all of it, foster care, adoption, children with special needs. Like, we want to put a big focus on that. And so we are currently in the process of building that culture. And so, again, I say that to say I don't have it all together. If you ask me the same question in 6 months, the answer might be different. However, I think that there are some basics to culture. Like, what is that? How do you build it? And I think there's three major things that you focus on. And the first one is a value. What do you value? And that starts with yourself. And so you want to talk about valuing kids that are overlooked, valuing kids that don't get, a fair shot, if you will. Just go back and look at the life of Jesus. And look at his ministry and how often he went to the ones that other people overlooked, or he went to the ones that wasn't the cultural norm or the tradition of that time. And he went and met them right where they are, and he rescued them, he redeemed them, he adopted them. And you see that not just in the life of Jesus, you see it throughout all the Old Testament, the character of God, and just adopting. And so I believe in order to truly build the culture of something, the leader has to have that value. And if the leader doesn't have that value, then the second best is they better have some people in leadership around them that do. Now, I don't think that every pastor has to, value and have this deep burning passion for everything. Like, you can't be everything at once. But I do believe that God has called the church, as we see reflected all throughout Scripture, to notice the ones that are unnoticed, to love the ones that seem unloved, to father the fatherless. James 1:27 talks about that. To take care of the orphans and widows. That's true religion, is what Scripture says. And so, not to be tainted by the world. And I think the world says, take the easy road. This has not been an easy process for us to go through this and adopt, and we have no idea what's in store. Bringing home a child with special needs into an established family who's, now 3 years old, and guess what? It's not easy in the church either. It's not easy to create things for children with special needs and disabilities. It's not easy to train people or to teach people, to lead people to see those kids the way that God sees them. So I think it starts with values. I think the second one is a goal. What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? If we're talking organizationally as a church, like, who do you want to be? And what are you trying to accomplish? And we as a church, we want to be known for that church that cares and looks for and advocates for these children, and to be a voice for the voiceless. And so so you set that goal, when you're trying to build culture, like, if you have no goals, then, you're
Right.
never going to be able to get there. And so, and the third thing that follows that is, is strategy. A goal without strategy is just a desire. It's just something that you want. If you don't actually plan a course of action on how to get there, and sometimes that course changes, but to set some very clear action steps. One of my favorite illustrations that I use when I teach leadership on culture is Chick-fil-A, like the most blessed place in the world, right?
Thank you,
Like,
God, for Chick-fil-A.
amen. Culture is not necessarily about what you do, more so than about who you are. And it's one of those things where it's really hard to express, because it's one of those things that you feel. Like, all right, Chick-fil-A, they do not have to run around and constantly say that they are number one in customer service. Why? Because every time you pull onto a campus of Chick-fil-A, you feel customer service, right? Like,
You
it's
do.
it's a part of who they are. And so I would imagine that Truett Cathy had a value to treat every customer like they are a VIP. He set a goal to create an organization that says, hey, we're going to have the best customer service there is. And then he created a strategy around that. And that strategy is probably, hey, we're going to be able to weed people out through the interview process. We're going to have certain lingo, like my pleasure, that is, everybody is taught that. If you ask for one, Polynesian sauce or Chick-fil-A sauce, we're going to give you 37. Like, like all of these strategy steps, these action steps that help accomplish the goal, which then displays what you value. And so part of what we have been doing, and I have been doing, obviously the value is there, the goal is there, but my strategy isn't necessarily there. And I think part of that is because, I don't have a special needs daughter right now. I don't know what it's like to live a life with a child with disabilities. And not to go here, but I should for just a moment, not to stir the pot, but
Uh-oh.
so I grew up in North Carolina, in country honky tonk, like Southern conservative Bible Belt. Well, last year when all of this racial tension and things were going on, some of my friends are like, dude, why are you? I don't understand how the African American population is saying X, Y, and Z. And my question would be to you, how many friends do you have if you're a Caucasian that is African American? How many conversations have you had with someone of color where you actually gain and obtain an understanding or a perspective that is not through your eyes?
Yes.
And so again, I hope I'm not trying to stir that, but that same principle is so true and so applicable to this community of parents and families with special needs. Like, just listen. Just take time to listen. And through the conversations that I've had in recent months, like, it only fuels my passion even more to build this culture, because my heart breaks from listening to so many families with children with special needs who say, I'm not going back to church.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of, like, all. I don't. My kids don't feel included. They're treated as outcasts. I get called out of service within 15 minutes because my kid is responding the way that he normally would when he's overstimulated, but it doesn't bother anybody. Like, there's all of these things. And so I would say to that, as far as building culture, just listen. Find some families with special needs who are Christian, who have the same mind of Christ and will help you build the church and not just necessarily tear it down.
Yeah.
But to listen. And one of the biggest things that I have obtained as far as information, is from listening to people. And maybe this is, if you're a pastor or leader or ministry leader, maybe this is for you. My mind has been the whole time, how do we build a program for children with disabilities? How do we build a program for special needs? And actually what I've gotten is the opposite. And what I've gotten is, how do you include my child in your programming that you already have?
Yeah.
And And so I think churches, I mean, again, I think there are aspects of church to where you need, a special needs, you need,
Yep.
certain rooms to where,
Sure.
it's not a one size fits all. But if you can include a child, do it. Why wouldn't you? Because what we see in people who aren't in families with disabilities and special needs, what you see is abnormal. What they see is completely normal.
Yep.
And so it's like I'm trying to come to church, which is normal for me, and have my kid do normal things, and everything that you're giving me and leading him to do is abnormal. And I'm not going to come to that.
Yeah.
Like, I can leave him at home and let him watch his iPad if that's all you're going to do is give him an iPad. Like, so listening and then educating. And so our biggest thing, I was just talking to a family who is very near and dear to my heart, who have 3 special needs kids. And the dad said to me, he said, let me tell you something. He said, stop focusing so much on what to do for a child with disabilities and focus on educating and creating a culture for kids who don't have disabilities on how to respond to kids who do. And so just educating that, like making it normal, because it is normal, educating your leaders. We're trying to create, once we get in a building, a place where, we have levels of support to where, hey, we want the classroom, the kids ministry to continue as normal. But if there is a significant disruption, we want another team who's going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to take him out for a moment and just love on him, where the parent can still worship, and you don't have to. And so I could go on and on about this. Just be intentional.
Yeah.
Be intentional. So
Yeah.
there's that.
That is awesome.
And we've talked about this. We had one of our guests was a past employer of ours, a guy named Kevin Spencer, who created a program that uses magic as a form of occupational therapy. And one of the things I loved about Kevin is that he treats everybody the same. And so, the perfect example of that is he tells this story about going in and working with this special needs student, and he and the student are having this conversation while he's teaching the student, these magic tricks, and they're just talking, they're having a good time, blah blah blah. At the end of like an hour or so, Kevin stands up and turns around, and the kid's father is standing behind him with a video camera and with just tears streaming down his face. And he grabs Kevin and he just gives him this bear hug. And Kevin's like, and he's like, thank you so much. And Kevin's like, well, of course, he's like, no, you don't understand. And the kid was 5 or 6.
Maybe, I don't recall exactly.
I don't remember how old the kid was.
Pretty young.
But
maybe
at
8
any
at
rate,
the most.
Yeah, he might have been 8. But at any rate, the point was, the father says, you don't understand. I have never heard my son speak. And, it was only because Kevin was willing to to kind of approach this child just as a child and not worry about what his disability was or what his diagnosis was. He just approached him as somebody who needed love, and he had that interaction. So I think that's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my computer's about to die here.
No, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
I see you going.
We're having all types of technical issues today.
It's one of those days. It's one of those. It's all good. It's all good. Man,
we need to hook you up. I mean, I was just thinking, our friend up in Corinth who's also waiting to adopt a child from China.
Oh,
so
nice.
He's going through the same thing you are. They were getting ready to go and adopt, and then the corona hit, so he's in exactly the same position as you are right now, and he lives just up the road from us. And then, Shane, I'm thinking about Shane Pruitt, who has special needs kids who we adopted, and I'm like, we could make sure all of you guys get together and chat and have a little support group for each other as well. Going
I would love to connect with Shane. Someone actually, we had a family in our home who had some foster kids, and we were watching church together, and I posted a picture of it last weekend, and someone said, you're turning into a Shane Pruitt. And I'm like, who? I've never heard of Shane Pruitt. So it's funny you mentioned that. I looked him up, and I was like, oh, okay.
Shane's a rock star.
Yeah, I would love to connect with him.
All right, we'll connect you guys. And maybe David as well, because you got that connection as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you've given us some great answers to some deep questions.
We
We're
could
gonna
talk
mix
forever,
things up.
I'm
I know,
sure.
right?
Yes.
We're going to mix things up, and we're going to do something a little more lighthearted with our lightning round that we call 5 questions.
All right, number 1. What are you binge watching right now?
Oh, absolutely nothing. I do not binge watch anything. I cannot sit still. I don't watch TV. I watch sports. I would say the only thing that I have ever binge watched in my life was 13 Reasons Why, because I had to preach a sermon series on it to teenagers. And that was the most horrific binge watch I'd ever experienced in my entire life.
Wow.
So, nothing. I don't even turn on Netflix.
Good for you.
That's good.
Okay, if you could have any other job than the one you have right now, what would it be?
Oh, super spiritual answer. Nothing. This job right here that I'm doing now. No. I mean, honestly, I do love what I do. But I would be... I have 2. I would either be a professional motocross or supercross racer. I love dirt bikes. I used to do that when I was a teenager, and my mom made me quit because I kept breaking bones. Or an orthopedic surgeon.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you should be both. That way you can fix yourself up.
My customer base would be strong, right?
That's right.
Awesome.
Okay, so what is your favorite to-go order?
Oh, come on. Jesus chicken. Spicy chicken, extra pickles, pepper jack, large waffle fry, large sweet tea.
Woo!
That's a
With
very
buffalo.
specific order. I love it.
Oh, man. The Brian special. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
Right?
So good.
It
It's holy.
It is.
Waffle fries.
Oh, those waffle fries. Oh, my goodness. What are you reading right now?
Oh, man. I actually just finished a really deep book by R.C. Sproul. I have 3 pages left called Chosen by God, and it's pretty mind-blowing. But I just pre-ordered Craig Groeschel's brand new book that's coming out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think. I think it's called Winning the Battle in Your Mind. I'm a huge perspective guy, but I don't know what's in between there. Actually, I'm constantly reading something, but I got to figure out what's next. So
Nice.
I started a book by Dr. Darius Daniels called Relational Intelligence. And didn't quite finish it, and so I think I'm going to go back and finish it.
That's a good idea.
Sounds good.
Before the next one arrives. Sounds like a plan.
Yes.
All right, final question. They decide to make a movie of your life. So who plays you?
Matthew McConaughey.
All
So-
right.
All right. Yeah, I would say our personalities are pretty similar, at least from his acting personality. So,
Yeah.
and he's a great communicator. Not saying I am, but I think he is an incredible communicator.
Yeah. Have you read Green
So-
Lights?
I have not.
You should. We did the audiobook version of it, and it was really
As we're
good.
driving, yeah.
Is that his?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh wow! No, I
And-
have never heard of that.
And I liked it because he's actually the one reading it
Right.
Wow.
in the audiobook.
Yeah,
So you could hear his
Who doesn't love his voice? It's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Awesome. Well, Brian, man, thank you so much for coming on today. We so
yes,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for having me.
Yeah, so if people do want to learn more about the church, where do they go?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. I forgot to come back to that.
That's all right.
Yes.
The 7citieschurchva.com, and that is all typed out in letter form. 7citieschurchva.com. It's also the same 7 Cities Church on YouTube, 7 Cities Church on Facebook, 7 Cities Church on Instagram.
Oh, good.
If you actually add the VA on all of them except YouTube.
Okay.
So there is a 7 Cities Church in Texas, actually.
There is.
So, yep,
Ah.
there is.
How about that?
So I can't remember the city, but yeah,
There's 7 of them.
There's 7 of them. That's right.
maybe so.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much. And
so good.
yeah, we look forward to catching up with you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Honored and praying over your guys' ministry as well.
We appreciate that.
Thanks,
we appreciate
Brian.
that.
Yes,
All right, take care, brother.
absolutely. Yes, sir.
Bye.
Y'all too.
Well, I told you guys would love him. He's
Incredible.
a super awesome guy.
Yeah.
Real heart for God.
You can hear the passion in his voice.
I love that. I
You can
love it
see
when you
it.
can hear somebody's passion,
Yes.
and it's not just a put on. It's not just
Right.
we're gonna say we believe this, but they actually believe that.
It's incredible.
So
I love it. We
yeah.
can talk for hours with Brian. I just know it. Okay. So next
week.
Next week.
Next Friday.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, we got Harmony. Harmony is a Christian hip hop artist. He looks like that. Looks like
Yes.
that. We had the chance to meet him a few years back, and he again another remarkable story about
Incredible story.
God's grace in our lives. You are not going to want to
Don't
miss
miss
it.
this one, guys.
He's got some powerful testimony, and then powerful stories about what God's doing with him now.
Yeah.
So. And he's got some pretty good music too.
He does
So,
indeed.
We might try to
So
put some of
be
those
sure
videos
to.
up on the week.
That's a
during
good
the week.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be sure to join us right here on Facebook, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, and we'll have Harmony joining us.
That's right. Any final thoughts?
That's all I got right now. I'm just
Okay.
pumped up. I've
Yeah.
finished my second cup of coffee. I need to catch up to Brian, who's on number 4, and keep on
I like
going.
that idea. I like
'Cause,
that.
yeah.
Cool. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Well, guys, thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.